Hi, I'm Sandip and I'm going to share my experience and journey of having angioedema and chronic spontaneous urticaria. I first noticed something was wrong with my skin when I had a red dotty rash all the way up both arms when I was playing hockey, and separate to that I was getting swelling in my fingers and in my toes. For about 6 months, it kept coming back, so I went to the doctor a few times in that time. It wasn't very obvious to the doctors what was happening, so I kept track with photos, so that would show what was happening, when it was happening. It was quite frustrating not to know what was happening and why it was happening. With the chronic spontaneous urticaria, I was finding that I was having either really large kind of red rashes, so hives about the size of a 1p coin, and then other times it was sort of smaller dotty rashes all over my body as well. And then with the angioedema, I was finding that I was getting swelling in my fingers, in my toes, sometimes in my hands and feet more widely, and then at one point even my eyelids. And the way that that felt was like I was on fire. It was feeling like someone was cooking my skin, searing my skin, and it was really painful, which meant that I was constantly miserable. I was, finding it really hard to enjoy day-to-day things. At the worst, I was finding that simple things like holding a mug of tea or typing on my laptop was too painful. And it got to the point where sometimes I would find it difficult walking, and therefore I wouldn't want to go out to work because I wanted to be as comfortable as possible. So at home, in my joggers and my jumpers and my several pairs of socks. So that was quite a hard time. When I first got the diagnosis for CSU and angioedema, I was really pleased. That sounds really odd, but it's because I finally knew what was happening and therefore we could figure out what the sort of course of treatment was. It was a really unexpected way that I was told that I had this. So I'd kind of scratched my bottom lip just like this and it had swollen up, and it went down after a few days, but I did it again and it happened again. So when I went to the doctor, I showed them photos of what had happened and they were able to give me a diagnosis then and there, including, looking at my history and what I was describing. So I tried antihistamines for about 3 to 4 months, which is quite normal to do, and as well as some complementary medication. Unfortunately, that didn't work on its own, so then I was moved on to the second line of treatment, which is to get injections that can modify your immunity. During that time, I was introduced to symptom tracking by the nurses. So that involves just a piece of paper where you get asked a series of questions about how mild, moderate or severe your symptoms are, and then over a course of a week that will give you a score of anything out of 42, and I was finding that my symptoms were in the high 30s out of 42, and then as soon as I went on the injections that modify your immunity, even after just 1 month that score went down to 1 out of 42. So it was a really significant difference, and in the 6-month course of that treatment it stayed in the low figures. It's been a really significant difference. It's been life-changing. I can do all the normal things that I want to do, so holding a mug of tea, walking, going out and about, going to exercise classes. I don't have to think about things in the way that I did before, what to wear, when I can go out, how I feel about going to work. It's just all things that I don't have to think about anymore, and to me that's normal, and I feel like I've gone back to normality since the treatment.